Hi everyone, this week we're talking about disability and feminism. It's particularly relevant this week because obviously of the Paralympics and also because of something that Becca mentioned in her video called the Atos Games, which is basically several groups coming together to protest against Atos, which is this company that is stripping disabled people of their benefits, who are also the same company that's sponsoring the Paralympics. And there's been a lot of direct action going on all throughout this week. I went to a protest just the other day that was outside an Atos office, and I'll put some photos up or something. There were some good articles written about it. I'll stick some links in the description so that you can see if there's anything going on in your area if you want to get involved, which would be really good. What I'm sort of seeing a distinct lack of at the moment is allies for disabled people. It's just not good enough. There's people just aren't getting involved because maybe they're scared or they're uncomfortable with disability. I don't know. All I know now is that disabled people really need allies right now. The government are being disgusting to them. People are dying, people are committing suicide, and we need to be there to help out. I think there are some things that feminists really need to think about in terms of disability and ableism. And I think one of the things is that Becca talked about in her video, which was making feminist spaces accessible. In a very practical sense, feminist spaces must be accessible. I realise this can be difficult, if you don't have access to a lot of funding, or if you don't know how to make something accessible. But we need to train ourselves into thinking in such a way that we are aware of access issues and that it's not something we forget about. I'll put a link in the description there's a sort of a checklist for how to make venues accessible. And yeah, Becca's right, we do need to caption the rest of our videos, and we'd love some help with doing that because we do need to make our videos as accessible as possible. We need to focus on sort of the way we think about disability and whether we actually think about disability at all. I think we need to rethink sort of a lot of lazy kind of ableism within our discourse. We need to make feminist spaces more accessible as well as in a practical way. We need to make them more accessible in a sort of intellectual way. I don't know if that makes any sense, but so we have to sort of tackle the issues within our discourse that might be exclusive to disabled people. For example, like aggression or derision towards someone who doesn't understand something that you're talking about in feminist discourse. I'm not trying to tone police and say you can't get angry with people, but I'm saying that we need to bear in mind the difficulties that some people with certain disabilities and certain impairments might face in sort of comprehending quite complex concepts put forward by feminism, or picking up on things like sarcasm and satire, because sometimes if you have something like autism or Asperger's, sometimes it's really difficult to pick up on things like that, and we need to be aware of that, and make sure that our discourse is put forward in such a way that it's more accessible to everyone. I think a really important thing is that we must combine the two fights, and this all just goes back to intersectionality again and again, because these two movements, the disability rights movement and feminism, can do so much for each other, and issues that affect people within the movements need to be acknowledged by both movements across movements. Feminism needs to recognise how the patriarchy can affect a disabled woman in a completely different way to how it can affect a non-disabled woman, and the disability rights movement needs to recognise how issues around ableism in a person's disability can be made completely different and more difficult based on their gender. We need to sort of consider how these issues that we talk about within feminist discussions can be experienced completely differently by those with impairments. For example, street harassment and rape, we have to be really careful not to generalise whether and how people experience these things. I think it's just all about sort of getting this mindset in which you need an inclusive mindset. You need to be able to think about how what you're saying might not necessarily be true to everyone, and that generalizations can be dangerous because it can mean we completely overlook people, and if we completely overlook people in a movement, then it's a bit of a shitty movement. That's all I've got to say really, and I want to hear what you guys have to say, and get involved in the Atos Games if you can. Okay, cool, I'll see you next week. Bye.